Let's compare the iPhone 14 versus the iPhone 13. There may be a few more changes than you might think. Welcome, you fine-looking people. It is Andrew here from AppleInsider, and I'm going to be breaking down every single difference between the brand new, the shiny, the all-new iPhone 14 and the last generation 2021 iPhone 13. There's not that many changes compared to years past, but there's still quite a few of them, and they definitely add up to make a newer, more enticing phone. So let's go ahead, I'm going to show you everything that is different between these two devices. First up, we should probably start with the design of these two phones. So really, they look the same. Even with the iPhone 13, there was minor changes from the iPhone 12, but at least you could tell the difference on the camera bumps changing their orientation. The iPhone 14, they almost look indistinguishable except for the new colors, like this shiny new blue color. On the side though, you will notice that, at least here in the US, Apple has ditched the SIM card slot. So there's no longer that tray located down the left-hand side of the iPhone 14. Otherwise, they're almost the same. Your iPhone 13 cases, though, won't fit your iPhone 14 because the camera bump is just a little bit larger. So if you had a very tight-fitting case, snug around the camera bump, it's not going to translate to the iPhone 14 just because the camera bump is too big. It's really not a noticeable difference, but the iPhone 14 does weigh a little bit more. Just holding them side by side, maybe I can feel, but it's a percentage of an ounce. It's not much of a difference at all. On the front, these displays haven't changed. It's still a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR display. It looks great and it still has the notch. Apple only included that new dynamic island on that fancy iPhone 14 Pro. Apple isn't really introducing a new chip with the base models iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus. Instead, Apple's using a modified version of the same A15 Bionic found in the iPhone 13. What Apple did, though, was make a few improvements that gets a bit better performance. So the CPU itself is going to be the same, but Apple is using a 5-core GPU instead of a 4-core GPU. Looking at benchmarks, Geekbench hasn't changed for those single-core or multi-core scores, really within the margin of error for the CPU, but looking at graphics performance, we definitely see the improvement from that additional GPU core. The new A15 Bionic also has increased memory, now 6 gigs across all the models. Finally, Apple's upgraded Bluetooth now supports Bluetooth 5.3, whereas the iPhone 13 only supported Bluetooth 5.0. The last connectivity feature isn't available yet, and that's emergency SOS via satellite. Here's how it's going to work. Say you're stranded somewhere, you're out exploring the desert, you're out of any cell connectivity, but as long as you have a clear view of the sky, you should be able to get a signal from a satellite. So you'll basically wave your iPhone through the air and try to latch on to one of those satellites. You'll hold your phone in the position facing that satellite while it connects, and it'll prompt you with all these series of messages asking you, is anybody injured, what kind of accident, anything like that that'll help speed up the process. Then that information is sent out to the satellite, which is then sent to emergency services. If the emergency services accept text communications, it'll go right to them. But if the nearest emergency services do not yet accept text communication, it'll go to one of Apple's own relay centers that'll receive that message, then transcribe it and call emergency services on your behalf. Apple says emergency SOS via satellite will be coming by the end of 2022. Now, it's not really a communication feature, but similar to emergency SOS via satellite, Apple has crash detection built into the iPhone 14. So if you're ever in an accident, front, rear, side, or rollover collision, your iPhone 14 can call emergency services for you. Before we go any further, I gotta thank our sponsor for this video, Baseus. Baseus has great charging accessories for all of your Apple gear. AirPods, Apple Watch, iPhone, even your MacBook, you can charge with their latest line of quick chargers. For example, this is the Super Sci Pro. It comes in both black and white. This is a 30-watt super fast charger. If you use the USB-C port, you can get 30 watts of power output, easily enough to fast charge your iPhone to get 50% in only 30 minutes. And if you're charging a MacBook Air, the M1 MacBook Air, you can get about 50% charge in less than an hour. If you split the ports and use both the USB-C and the USB-A port at the same time, it'll intelligently route that power to where it's needed best. So you can get up to 18 watts via USB-C and an additional 12 watts over USB-A. Plus, it's super small and compact and features a foldable plug to take it with you anywhere you go. Then we have the new Baseus Adaman 2 power bank. This guy is great. It also features 30 watts of USB-C power output and an additional 2 USB-A ports. Plus, it has a little screen right there on the front giving you an idea of how much battery is left in the power bank itself. As far as capacity goes, it can hold up to 10,000 milliamp hours of juice, plenty enough to get you through the extra day or the weekend. We are in the middle of tech season right now. Apple has new devices, other companies have new devices, and you probably need some chargers to go with them. So check out Baseus. There are links for all of these down below in the description. They make a bunch of great stuff. I love them. Thank you again to Baseus for sponsoring this video. Now, let's go ahead and get back to our main content. Then we have the cameras. On iPhone 14, Apple's continued to make improvements to the cameras, even if they're not as impressive as what we see on the iPhone 14 Pro. For starters, Apple increased the size of that primary sensor. It also increased the speed of the aperture. The main camera went from a 1.6 aperture to a wider 1.5. Apple also introduced the photonic engine. This is basically the capture process for a photo. It refined it, removed steps, and did all of this work like applying deep fusion earlier in the process to help produce better photos. This is all built into the ISP inside of that A15 Bionic chip. The two big new features for the camera includes action mode that acts like a gimbal built into your phone to create incredibly stable footage at up to 2.8K resolution, though you do have a little bit of a crop in on those videos. And then the second new feature is that cinematic mode has finally supported 4K video. It'll now shoot 4K in 24 or 30 frames per second. Personally, I think it makes cinematic mode much more useful. Shooting in 1080 just looked grainy when I put it up on my living room TV. The front-facing camera, still 12 megapixels, but Apple has increased the sensor, now with an aperture of f1.9 coming from an f2.2 on the iPhone 13, and Apple has built in autofocus on that front-facing camera for the first time. Lastly, when it comes to battery life, iPhone 14 should get you about an extra hour of battery life depending on your usage. Apple says iPhone 14 should get about 20 hours of video playback, whereas the iPhone 13 was only rated for about 19 hours. Depending on your usage, you can get more or less than these promised numbers. Either way, the battery life on iPhone 14 is better than what it was on the iPhone 13. So that pretty much covers it. Everything new and different between the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 14. There's a lot of small features, and really year over year, it's not a huge upgrade for people, but there's still great features, and the emergency and safety features are second to none in the industry. But let me know what you guys think. Are you interested in the iPhone 14? Let me know down below in the comments, or better yet on Twitter at Andrew_OSU. If you'd like to grab an iPhone 14 or an iPhone 13 for yourself, there are links down below in the description. Otherwise, stay tuned. I have so many more videos to share with you guys.